The cold, metallic walls of the Valthrax loomed like a silent giant, pulsating with the alien hum of its engines. The ship's corridors twisted like a labyrinth of darkness, its cold and sterile atmosphere stifling. Inside the holding cells, a few remaining humans sat, shackled, bruised, and scarred by their capture, yet none of them showed fear. The air tasted of something far stronger than defeat, an unyielding defiance. Captain Amelia Royce sat against the cold floor, her eyes closed, but her mind sharp as ever. She could feel the vibrations of the ship beneath her, its engines a constant reminder of their fate. Despite the alien technology that surrounded them, their captors couldn't break them. Not yet. She opened her eyes and looked around. The others, her comrades, were scattered across the room, sitting in the same state of controlled stillness. No one spoke. Silence was their rebellion. In the corner, Lieutenant Jace Carter, a man who had once stood at the helm of the greatest military ships humanity had ever built, stared straight ahead, his expression a mix of quiet fury and calculation. His fingers twitched, always seeking something to do. They all had something to prove now, something they couldn't let the Trivac take from them. Not their identity, not their will to resist. Amelia stood up slowly, careful to avoid the eyes of the guards watching from the other side of the force field. There was a reason they didn't approach. She knew the Trivac were watching them closely, studying them. For all their power, they didn't understand humans. They had seen entire worlds brought to their knees by fear, by domination. But the humans, her people, they didn't bend that easily. A faint sound broke the silence, a guard walking by, his boots echoing against the metal floor. Amelia's eyes flicked to the energy field that separated them from their captors. The field hummed low, a constant reminder of their captivity, but it didn't matter. Not to her, not to her people. They were more than prisoners. They were symbols of something far more dangerous. The guard paused, his hand resting on the control panel. Amelia could see him through the glass window, a large alien creature, wearing dark armor adorned with glinting insignias of the Trivac Empire. His eyes were cold, devoid of any empathy, but there was a flicker of something else in them when he looked at her, a curiosity. He had been watching her for days now, probably confused by her refusal to give in to the simplest of demands, fear. The Trivac believed fear was the ultimate weapon. They used it to control entire species, bending them to their will with their superior technology. But fear had no hold on humans, not here, not now. They had learned that lesson too well. "Do you know why you're here, human?" The guard's voice filtered through the barrier, mechanical and distorted. Amelia didn't answer immediately. She could feel the other's eyes on her, waiting for her move. She smiled faintly. There was a quiet power in the way the humans held themselves in this place, resilient, unbroken. Her gaze locked with the guards, and she straightened. "Because you're afraid of us," she said flatly. The guard's eyes narrowed, his grip tightening on the control panel. "You have no reason to be defiant. You will break eventually. You all will." Amelia's smile didn't falter. "Maybe, but not today." She let the words hang in the air, knowing they would sting. The guard's response was immediate, an unspoken decision to escalate the pressure. He turned and walked down the hall, the sound of his steps slowly fading into the distance. It didn't matter. He was wrong. The Trivac had underestimated humanity, and they would pay for it. Amelia turned back to her fellow prisoners. "Stay quiet. Don't let them see you fear." Lieutenant Carter's voice cut through the silence. "They don't understand us. They've never faced anything like us." "No," Amelia agreed softly. "They haven't." She could feel the weight of every word. Humanity's greatest strength had always been its ability to survive the impossible. To adapt, to fight, to rise. It wasn't fear that drove them, it was their refusal to be controlled. And that, more than anything else, terrified their captors. The door to their cells slid open with a hiss, and two more guards stepped in, flanking a tall alien officer. This one was different, his uniform more elaborate, his eyes colder. Amelia's pulse quickened slightly. She recognized the officer immediately. General Vratel. Vratal stood tall and imposing, his alien features sharp and angular, his eyes glowing with a deep red hue. He was one of the highest-ranking officers in the Trivac military, and the architect of humanity's captivity. His reputation as a conqueror stretched across galaxies, his presence feared in every corner of the galaxy. But there was something about him that unsettled Amelia more than any of the other Trivac soldiers. He wasn't just cruel. He was methodical. A strategist. And his obsession with breaking humanity's spirit had grown evident in recent days. "You continue to disappoint me." Vratel's voice resonated coldly, as he looked at each prisoner. "You refuse to cooperate. You refuse to break." One of the prisoners, a woman from the medical division, met his gaze unflinchingly. "We don't break. Not for you. Not for anyone." Vratal didn't respond immediately. He only looked at her, the intensity of his gaze enough to freeze the air in the room. His voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. "You will. All of you will. And when you do, you'll understand just how futile this defiance truly is." The guards stepped forward, their weapons raised, but Amelia's calm voice stopped them. "No. Leave them." Vratal raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "And what would you do, human? Your rebellion is pointless." Amelia stood tall, meeting his gaze with the same unflinching resolve that had kept her alive for so long. "Our rebellion isn't about winning. It's about showing you that no matter how far you go, no matter how many of us you take, you will never erase us. You'll never make us fear." For a long moment, Vratal said nothing. He only stared at her, as if trying to read her, to find some weakness. But there was nothing. No fear. No hesitation. Just a quiet, stubborn resistance that he couldn't crack. Finally, he nodded to the guards. "Leave them." As the door closed behind them, Amelia felt a wave of relief flood through her. They hadn't won yet. But they had made their first move. And it was enough. The humans, broken and shackled as they were, still held their most dangerous weapon, defiance. The Valthrax hummed with the rhythm of alien power, an oppressive sound that seemed to vibrate through the bones of every human aboard. The metallic walls, cold and unyielding, were their prison, but inside, a quiet fire was beginning to burn. Captain Amelia Royce stood at the far end of the holding cell, her gaze focused on the small group of prisoners she had come to lead. The others were still, too still, as though awaiting the next cruel twist of fate. But Amelia had seen something in their eyes, a spark. And that spark, once ignited, would never be extinguished. "How long do we wait, Captain?" Jace Carter's voice broke the silence. His eyes were tired, his face a map of exhaustion and grit. But there was a glint of something else in them, hope. Amelia turned toward him, her expression unreadable. "We wait until we can move, until the Trivac make their next mistake." "And when will that be?" Jace asked, his voice laced with impatience. "Not long," she said. "They're getting desperate. They think we're broken. They think they've won. That's when they'll make their move." Amelia had learned long ago that the enemy's arrogance was a weapon as dangerous as any weapon they wielded. The Trivac, in all their might and technology, underestimated the power of the human spirit. And that was a mistake they would pay for. For now, they needed to remain silent, to bide their time. The Trivac were watching them closely, and the smallest mistake could cost them everything. But that didn't mean they were idle. Amelia had her own plans. Over the last few days she had been watching, studying the routine of the guards shifts, the patterns of the Valthrax's energy fluctuations. Every small detail mattered. Every shift in the ship's atmosphere was a clue, a potential opening. The door to the cell slid open again, and the same Trivac officer, General Vratal, strode in. His towering figure cast a shadow over the prisoners, and his cold, alien eyes scanned the room, settling on Amelia. His reputation preceded him, but in this moment, Amelia felt nothing but a quiet sense of defiance. She knew the general had been frustrated by the human's resilience, and she could see it in the tension in his jaw, the tightness in his posture. "Still standing, Captain?" Vratal's voice was sharp, laced with contempt. "I expected more, cooperation from you by now. Amelia straightened, not bothering to hide the faint smirk tugging at her lips. You haven't broken us, General. Not yet. Vratel's eyes narrowed. You will. You all will. I've seen entire species crumble under less pressure than this. We're not like them, Amelia said, her voice calm and measured. You'll learn that soon enough. Vratel took a step forward, his gaze never leaving Amelia. I've watched you. Your resistance, it's frustrating. I'm beginning to wonder how long you can keep it up. Amelia's eyes met his, unwavering. As long as it takes. Vratel turned abruptly, signaling the guards to close the door behind him. You'll break, he muttered, his voice trailing off as the door slid shut with a hiss. Amelia exhaled slowly. The encounter had been brief, but it had revealed something crucial. Vratel was more concerned than he let on. He wasn't just trying to crush their bodies, he was trying to crush their minds. And that was a mistake. The moment the door closed, she gathered the prisoners around her. They were still wary, still uncertain, but Amelia could see the change in their eyes. They had begun to understand. They had begun to realize that this wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about something more, something the Trivac would never understand. We don't have much time, Amelia said quietly, her voice low but firm. We need to be ready. A young man, barely more than a boy, stepped forward. His face was pale, and his hands shook as he clenched them into fists. Ready for what, Captain? They're too strong. They have everything. We're nothing. Amelia fixed him with a steady gaze, her voice unwavering. What we have is each other. And that is more than enough. Jace stepped forward, his usual sarcastic tone replaced by something else, something sharper. We're not just going to sit here and wait for them to break us. Amelia's right. They're watching us, and they think we're beaten. But we're not. We never will be. The young man looked from one face to another, and slowly, something shifted in his eyes. He nodded, though he still seemed uncertain. Amelia could see that it would take more than just words to convince him. It would take action. Here's what we're going to do, Amelia said, her voice low but urgent. Tonight, when the guard shift changes, we make our move. We'll start small, but it'll be the beginning. We'll find the weak points in this ship. We'll work together, and we'll make them understand that humanity is not so easily defeated. For the first time in days, she saw the others nod in agreement. They weren't just surviving anymore. They were fighting. The night shift arrived. The cold, sterile lights flickered dimly as the guards filed into position. Amelia and her team moved quickly, silently. They had spent days memorizing the patterns, learning the layout of the ship, finding the weak spots. The Trivac had underestimated them. That would be their mistake. Jace, ever the strategist, had already disabled the cameras in the holding cell. They weren't blind, just careful. Amelia's heart raced, not from fear but from the exhilaration of the plan taking shape. A low hiss echoed through the room as a small hatch in the wall opened. It wasn't much, a maintenance shaft, barely big enough for a person to crawl through, but it was a start. We move on my signal, Amelia whispered, her voice steady. They gathered their courage, their hearts beating in unison. The first step of their rebellion had begun. It wasn't about the ship or the Trivac anymore. It was about sending a message. No matter how far they were pushed, humanity would never be broken. The hum of the Valthrax had become almost deafening in its quiet intensity. Every corridor, every hallway, felt alive, reverberating with the movement of an alien vessel that was now their prison. But within the confines of their cells, a different kind of pulse began to beat, one of defiance, and one that would soon echo through every corner of the ship. Captain Amelia Royce had never known fear in the way the Trivac thought of it. Fear had no place in her. And now, as she crouched in the maintenance shaft, watching as her team moved swiftly and silently, the feeling she had was not fear, but something far stronger. Hope. It had been kindled in the hearts of her fellow humans, each small step bringing them closer to something the Trivac could never understand, the unyielding strength of humanity's will. Amelia's breath was steady, her fingers gripping the cold metal of the wall as she signaled for the others to move forward. The maintenance shafts were narrow, dark, and impossibly quiet, save for the soft patter of their footsteps. It was a crawl through darkness, a far cry from the grand battles and victories Amelia had once known. Yet in this moment, the quiet was powerful. It was their weapon. Lieutenant Jace Carter led the way, his eyes flicking back toward the others, his movements calculated. He had grown quieter in recent days, his usual bravado replaced by the kind of quiet focus that spoke volumes. Jace knew this was their moment, not to take down the entire ship, but to plant the seed that would begin the insurrection. They didn't need a full-scale battle, not yet. What they needed was to be seen. "Amelia," Jace whispered as he glanced back. "This is it. If they find us..." "They won't." She cut him off, her voice soft but confident. "They're not ready for us." Their voices were a muted murmur in the thick darkness. Every step forward felt like a weight lifted, like the walls around them were slowly crumbling. Amelia could feel the resistance growing, not just in herself, but in the others too. Each of them had been broken in some way, but now they were pieces coming back together, stronger than before. The crew had always been the backbone of her mission, but now, in this darkness, they had become something more, something that could not be taken from them. They were no longer prisoners. They were rebels, and every rebel had a moment when they realized their power. This was theirs. The first hurdle was the control room, a small, heavily guarded section of the ship where the ship's systems were monitored. It was here that Amelia had directed Jace and the others to plant their first strike. It wasn't much, just a simple disruption of the ship's monitoring systems. It wouldn't incapacitate the ship or send it spiraling out of control, but it would send a message. A message to the Trivac that humanity was not the broken species they assumed. As the team reached the door to the control room, Amelia's heart thudded in her chest, but not with fear. She could hear the faint shuffle of Trivac guards inside, talking in hushed tones, unaware of the human forces assembling just outside. Jace gave her a look, silent but unmistakable. They were ready. Amelia nodded, and with a deft motion, she pressed the door release panel. The door slid open, silent but sure, and the team slipped inside. The room was a complex maze of consoles, holographic displays, and alien technology. At the far end, 2 guards stood, their backs turned, monitoring the ship's systems. They were vulnerable, unprepared. The humans, though still shackled in many ways, had learned the subtle art of stealth, the art of patience, of waiting for the perfect moment. And the moment had arrived. In one swift motion, Jace and Amelia moved toward the guards. A flash of handcuffs and a quick, practiced maneuver had both aliens incapacitated in seconds. The others moved in to ensure they remained silent, all while Amelia accessed the nearest control terminal. The hum of alien technology pulsed beneath her fingertips as she typed in commands, simple disruptions that would buy them time. Their sabotage wasn't designed to destroy, but to delay. It was a quiet act of rebellion, the calm before a storm. "There," she muttered, stepping back from the terminal. "It's done." Jace glanced at her, a grin tugging at the corner of his lips. "Nice work, Captain. Let's see if they notice." As they retreated to the maintenance shaft, the weight of what they had just done settled in. The ship was now aware of an anomaly, just enough of a disruption to make the Trivac cautious. Amelia knew it wouldn't be long before they realized the humans weren't just waiting to be crushed. They were actively fighting back. But as they retreated through the corridors, something unexpected happened. The ship's PA system crackled to life, a deep, guttural voice filtering through the speakers. "Attention, all personnel. Anomalies detected in Section 17. Immediate action required. All guards on high alert. The humans are awake." Amelia's heart skipped a beat. The message was direct, cutting through the calm of their rebellion. But it wasn't just the message itself. It was what followed. A voice, a human voice, spoke through the static. "We are not afraid." Amelia's pulse quickened as the sound of that voice echoed through the ship. It wasn't just a signal. It was defiance. It was a symbol, a message that reverberated across the alien vessel. The humans had made their move, and their rebellion was no longer a whisper. It was a roar. What the hell was that? Jace muttered under his breath, his eyes scanning the shadows ahead. Amelia's gaze was sharp. It's them. They figured it out. The rebels, those who had been imprisoned alongside them, had caught fire. They weren't just reacting to the Trivac anymore. They were leading. Someone Amelia hadn't seen or spoken to, had used the ship's communication systems to broadcast the humans' first declaration of war. And they'd done it together. The sound of guards rushing down the hallway towards them signaled that the Trivac had finally realized they were in trouble. But it was too late for them now. The spark of rebellion had been ignited, and there was no going back. Get ready, Amelia said, her voice low and commanding. We fight, and we fight together. We are humanity. And we will never be broken. As the guards approached, Amelia's team formed up, their faces set, their hands steady. They were more than prisoners now. They were a movement. And this was only the beginning. The Valthrak shuddered, its vast corridors vibrating with the hum of alien machinery as its systems struggled to maintain control. Within the holding cells, a new kind of energy surged, raw, electric, and untamable. The rebellion was no longer confined to whispered words and covert glances. It had exploded into something more dangerous, more defiant. The Trivac had no idea how close they were to losing everything. Amelia Royce stood at the heart of the chaos, her pulse steady as she surveyed the scene unfolding before her. The human prisoners had become something more than just captives. They were a force, a united front that had sparked a fire within every person aboard the Valthrax. The Trivac had underestimated them, and now it was too late to stop what had already begun. We need to keep pushing forward, Amelia said, her voice unwavering as she addressed the growing group of rebels that had gathered. They were a mix of soldiers, scientists, civilians, and anyone who had managed to survive the early days of the invasion. All of them were here now, under her command, ready to fight for something far greater than survival. Jace Carter, ever the strategist, moved beside her, his face set in a hard line. They'll be coming for us soon. We've got a small window before the Trivac realize just how deep this runs. We need to get to the ship's core systems, disrupt their control of the Valthrax, and cripple their ability to retaliate. If we don't act fast, this rebellion will be snuffed out before it ever gets going. Amelia nodded, her eyes sharp. Then we move now. The humans had no advanced technology to fight back with, no weapons, no ships, no fleets. They had only their resolve, their ingenuity, and their relentless determination. But those things were more than enough. They had already made their mark on the ship. Now they had to make it count. The control room was just ahead, its location a secret, known only to the highest-ranking officers. But Amelia's team had already gathered information, making their way through the maintenance corridors to avoid detection. It was a dangerous game, but they had no choice. The Valthrax was far too large for a full-scale attack. They had to be precise, surgical. As they neared the entrance to the control room, Jace held up a hand, signaling for the group to stop. 2 guards just ahead, he whispered. His eyes scanned the area, calculating their every move. We can't afford to make a sound. If they alert the rest of the ship, we're finished. Amelia crouched low, her breath steady. She exchanged a glance with Jace, then nodded. It was time. Without a word, they moved. Amelia and Jace were the first to slip into position, their bodies low to the ground. The guards were positioned at the control room entrance, their backs to the hallway. Their conversation was muted, but the tension was palpable. Every second counted. Jace signaled. In a blur of motion, they struck. The guards never saw them coming. One guard was taken down quickly, the other caught off guard by Amelia's swift maneuver. A single motion was enough to silence them both. The control room door slid open, and the team rushed in. Inside, a vast array of holographic screens flickered to life, their alien symbols glowing with energy. Amelia wasted no time, moving to the nearest terminal. Her fingers flew over the alien interface, working quickly to bypass the security measures. It wasn't easy, nothing on the Valthrax was. But they had the element of surprise, and that was enough. Jace moved to the side, keeping watch for any sign of reinforcements. The door to the control room was locked down, but it wouldn't stay that way for long. They had to be quick. The tension in the air was thick as the seconds stretched into what felt like eternity. Amelia's eyes narrowed as the terminal finally blinked, the system granting her access. She didn't hesitate. "Disrupt their communications," she commanded, her voice low but clear. "Shut down their central systems. We need to throw them into chaos." Jace nodded, immediately moving to another terminal to assist. The rest of the team stood guard, eyes trained on the door, ready for anything. Amelia watched the screen as the ship's systems began to flicker, the hum of the Valthrax growing erratic. The disruption wasn't instantaneous, nothing ever was. But it was enough. Enough to throw the Trivac into confusion, enough to give the humans a fighting chance. "Done," Jace said, his voice tinged with relief. "We've compromised their communications. They'll have no way of coordinating a response in time." Amelia stood up, a quiet sense of victory rising within her. But they weren't finished. Not yet. "Now we make sure they know who did this." Her team moved swiftly, spreading out across the control room. They gathered whatever tools they could find, prepared to make one last stand. Amelia's gaze lingered on the terminal, her thoughts racing. It was done. The Valthrax was no longer operating at full capacity. The Trivac had lost their edge. But even as she absorbed the weight of their success, the sound of boots thundering in the hallway reached her ears. Reinforcements were on the way. "We've got company," Jace muttered, his voice steady despite the urgency. "Let's move. We need to get out of here before they realize we're the ones who hit them." Amelia nodded, her eyes scanning the control room one last time before they made their retreat. "We'll get out. But we leave a message behind." With quick, practiced movements, Amelia and her team set to work. They detonated small charges on the terminals, setting off a chain reaction that would destroy the data, erase any trace of their involvement. But they didn't just destroy. They left something behind. As the team made their way back into the maintenance shaft, the last explosions reverberated through the ship, sending a shockwave of disarray into the Trivac ranks. The Valthrax was in chaos, its systems frantically trying to regain control. It would take the Trivac time to realize what had happened. By then, it would be too late. The rebellion had taken its first true step. No longer a whisper, it was now a roar, one that would echo across the stars, one that would reverberate in the hearts of the Trivac for as long as they lived. "We've done it," Jace said, a grim smile tugging at his lips. "The ship's in chaos, and now they know we're here." Amelia's eyes glinted with fierce determination. "And they'll know this, we're never going back into the dark again. We are humanity. And we will fight until every last one of us is free." The fire had begun. And now, there was no stopping it.